So the various semiotics never occur in pure form. They're always mixed. As they say, psychoanalysis is itself based on a mixed semiotic. We get the interpretive regime, the signifying regime, with the psychoanalyst's obsession with interpretation, mixed with the passional aspect where the face is hidden and turned away, and there's the extreme, the subject takes place, and we get all of that. So all the regimes are mixed. They never occur in pure form, but they can always generate new ones from the plane of consistency. New ones can always be generated, and this becomes, there are four different aspects where they talk about the generative aspect of the regimes is how they come into being in the first place. But then there's a transformational aspect of the regimes that has to be considered, because there are certain laws whereby each of these different semiotics can be translated into each of the others. And so each one has a way in which it does this. The pre-signifying regime has analogical transformations which take place within that regime, whereas the signifying regime has symbolic transformations. The counter-signifying regime of the nomads has polemical transformations, and finally the post-signifying regime of subjectification is the transformations are consciousness-related, or mimetic, as they put it. And so an example of this might be the way in which, let's say, the pre-signifying regime of the blacks in the United States is appropriated, let's say, by a white figure like Elvis Presley, who appropriates the music and recodes it and translates it into a signifying regime, the white man's signifying regime, which is actually, of course, a mixed regime of signifying and post-signifying, and translates it. Or you get the reversed, where the blacks may take white culture such as Christianity and recode it and transform it into voodoo. So the transformation process can take place in either direction, but in each case there's always a transformation and a reconfiguration. This is how the new semiotic comes into being, where a new abstract machine comes in and draws a new diagram that then organizes the assemblages of enunciation on the one hand and the machinic assemblages of bodies on the other. We could look at an assemblage like the chivalric period, where the abstract machine is the idea of amour, A-M-O-R, love. That becomes the abstract machine that draws the diagram in which we have the machinic assemblage of the man-woman assemblage, and for the collective statements of enunciation we have the chivalric romances. So that's one example where you have an abstract machine that codes for the collective assemblages of enunciation on the one hand, and the machinic assemblages of bodies on the others. So the machinic assemblages are always effectuating the abstract machines on these two different planes, the planes of expression and content, that basically hold human culture together, which is comprised then of these varying strata, as it were, of semiotics that mix and collide and intermix. And I think this is one of the beautiful things about D&G that you don't get in Spengler or Gebser, where they tend not to understand how the differing ethnic groups collide into each other, and from out of the various syntheses of their collisions come new cultures. This isn't really a process that was understood by Spengler, and Gebser tends to keep his models pure. Sometimes he'll say that the magical and the mythical consciousness structures are together in one society, but generally the structures themselves aren't mixed. They just come into being as a pure internal structure unto itself. And neither philosopher, I think, takes into account how the differing ethnicities, how each ethnic group has its own semiotic. And they say that there are an infinite number of semiotics. They're just randomly choosing 4 of them here to discuss. Every ethnic group has its own semiotic, whereby it's always undergoing these analogical processes of transformation of one semiotic into another in the creation of their own new semiotics. And so we've always got this constant process of ethnic collisions taking place, particularly today when we are retribalizing, and the tribes are now, exactly as Joyce predicted in Finnegan's Wake, colliding into one another. And so we'll see what kinds of new mixed regimes come out of all this. But that's the gist of this chapter on the differing sign regimes.